Well, good afternoon, everyone. Are you excited to be at the conference? Yes. This is my first time in Wyoming. I flew in on Thursday and got to experience and hike and explore yesterday. And so you live in an absolutely beautiful state. I'm originally from Georgia, so I live in northern Georgia near the mountains there. And so I love anywhere with mountains and farms and all of that. So I feel kind of right at home in Wyoming. So thank you so much for coming to this workshop. Pitching 101, I think it's some of the handouts that might say Pitch Please, which is more of the sassier version, title of this workshop. So it's a little obvious, I guess, what we will be talking about today. But raise of hands, how many people are a little nervous about pitching, querying, or find the whole thing kind of intimidating? Yeah. Okay, I totally relate. A few years ago, before I got into publishing, I guess that was a good many years ago, I went to the Writers Digest pitching conference up in New York, and it was kind of scary because I was a young person, no idea how publishing worked, and I went to this big room with hundreds and hundreds of writers. Agents were lining the walls, and the buzzer sounded, everyone would line up, and we had 3 minutes to pitch our life work to agents. So, as a young person with little experience in publishing, it's one of the most frightening things I'd ever done. And I remember sitting in front of some of those agents and just thinking that they determined my career and that a yes from them would just open so many doors and I'd be a best-selling author and retire at like 30 and then that would be my whole life. And from the other side of it, I've been to school. I went to school for publishing. I've worn a lot of different hats in publishing. And now I see just how, not flawed, but really the misperceptions that I was holding on to regarding publishing. And so I'm excited about this workshop. It's one of my favorite to teach, really because I think that some of the information I can give will help you step into your querying pitching season with more confidence and with realistic expectations as to what to expect. But yes, a little bit about me. My name is Caroline George. I am a full-time writer, but I also work as a literary agent for Kyle Young Literary Elite. I went to Belmont University in Nashville for publishing and public relations. I've worked with HarperCollins. I've worked with the Dunham Group, Book Grabber, worn a lot of different hats in publishing, even worked with Hillsong Publishing over in Sydney, Australia. So done a little bit of everything. But when I went to Belmont, this is just a little fun story before we dive into pitching and querying. And this might seem random, but trust me, I have a point with it. So when I was in school, my friend Hannah really got into the whole dating app scene. So she really got into the Bumble and Tinder scene. So sometimes on the weekends, she would invite me over and she'd show me her dating app finds. So like guys that she'd found on these dating apps. So one night, the first guy she showed me was like a hunky Brad. You know, he's young, single, ready to mingle. You know, he had pictures of himself and not him with posed with a bunch of girls. So total winner, I guess, for a dating app. So from hunky Brad, we moved on to John. So 36-year-old John. Single and ready to mingle. And I need all of you to really channel your writer imaginations for this next part. So imagine John propped against a cement fence, dressed only, and I mean only, in a fur vest. His bare and very hairy legs stretched out in front of him. With a Captain Hook mustache and receding hairline, and set against a backdrop of some kind of field dotted with power lines, John held a mimosa, maybe to entice girls to swipe right and spend the night. So my response to Hannah when she showed me this picture of Fur Vest John, which he does exist, and I will, if you guys want to see a photo at the end of the session, I will happily show you. Fur Vest John, he does exist. But my first response was, okay, is he a farmer? Is he a Norseman? You know, is he brunch? I mean, who knows, right? And so my reason for I guess, giving this story up front is to say that if you're a writer and you're pitching and querying to agents, kind of feels like if you're on a dating app, you know, you try to look cute, you put your best foot forward, and you seek out literary agents that would be a compatible match with you. Because you want them to swipe right. You know, you want the agent to kind of swipe right. So the question is, do you want to be hunky Brad, or do you want to be a Fur Vest John? And my job today is to make sure none of you are going to be Fur Vest Johns when you pitch and query to agents. So just a little preface, there are so many opinions when it comes to pitching and querying. If you just do a Google search on how to put a query together, you're going to get a ton of different formats, a lot of different opinions. I know before I went and pitched agents, there was a certain website I kept going to try to figure out how to structure my pitch. And really it was super confusing. And so from the agent publisher side, I've kind of created a template that'll help you when you're pitching and querying to kind of put your best foot forward, keep it super simple. And this is also the format that I use when I'm sending out my clients' books to publishers. So it's kind of something that I've found tried and true. It's a lot of my editor friends use the same format or prefer this format, and so it should be helpful. So again, take with what I'm saying, not with a grain of salt, but just know that a lot of people are going to have different opinions. Same with your books. You might get a rejection for your book, and it doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means it's not that agent or editor's taste. And so everything in publishing, there is no tried and true equation. Quick little rabbit trail. My very first day working with HarperCollins, I went in thinking that I was at, I'd hit the mother lode. I felt like a hiker who had, climbed to that peak, to ask the monk, what's the meaning of life kind of feeling. And I remember walking up to my boss and asking him, how do you make a best-selling book? Like, how does that work? And he looked at me, and I'll never forget the look on his face. He looked at me and just went, we have no idea. We just try stuff until it works. And really, that is a great example. Publishing is always changing. I'm in my 20s, and I still don't know how a lot of technology works. I have a younger sister who I have to have teach me certain things when it comes to technology, just because things are constantly changing. And so that's something to keep in mind. The publishing landscape's ever changing. And if a book that you've written that you love, if it's not being shown interest right now, shelf it, write something else, and trust that the market's going to come back around. We have a very cyclical market, and so if something's really not being bought and selling right now, that doesn't mean that's not going to in the future. So that's just a little bit of hope for you guys. But for fun, I want to share some of the bad queries I've received. Do you guys want to hear some of these? Yes. It's another reason why this is my favorite workshops to teach. These are completely anonymous because I respect writers, and I would put that out there. I have sent some bad queries in my time. And so it's a learning curve. So, any step that you take, you might look back and think, okay, that was probably not the smartest move. But as someone who spent hours rehearsing my pitches for agents and then realizing that what I did was kind of dumb, it's just part of the learning process. So nothing you do is ever failure. But I really want to use some of these just to kind of help you see what works and what doesn't and why. So here's the first one. Hello. They didn't even address it to me. It was just a hello. Hello. Once upon a time, there was a sad kingdom. Everyone in the kingdom was sad and very poor. It was the poorest and saddest kingdom in the world. No punctuation. And the saddest of them all was the king himself. He was so sad because he didn't know what to do to bring happiness to his people. Every night before the king went to bed, he would pray, then say to himself, I wish I had the richest kingdom in the world, then I could make all the people in my kingdom happy, the king would say. One night, while the king was praying for a little man, appeared to him for a little man. If you give me the key to happiness, in quotation, I will grant you your wish for the richest kingdom in the world, the little man said to the king. In the sad kingdom lived a little often girl, I'm thinking it was an orphan, but a little often girl named Marie. Little Marie was searching throughout the kingdom for someone to love her, but when she meets with the king, everything comes together. This is all one paragraph, by the way. I have always wanted to be a writer. This is true. When I was 6 years old, my teacher made me sit outside of the classroom. She said that I was interrupting the class because I wouldn't stop making up and telling stories. Now I'm focusing all my time on my writing. After researching agencies, I believe we would enjoy working together. I would be honored to speak with you about representation. Thank you for your consideration. A few things I want to note. We really, the big scheme of things, have no idea what this story is about. We know that there was a king who wants a rich kingdom, then there's like a little man, an often girl. I don't know the word count. I don't know how I would market this book. I don't know the genre. Is this a children's story? Is this an adult story? What is this? And so from an agent perspective, and even from an editor perspective, they're thinking about one thing. How am I going to sell this book? And so with something like that, it doesn't really answer any of those important questions. I also don't feel like the writer has taken any time to research me. So I'm like, why am I going to be a good fit for this book? was I just in a list of agents that they were querying and they were just sending it out? And so also punctuation, even something simple as spelling and things like that. How can I trust that this manuscript's going to be in publishing condition? So that's one reason, or several reasons why this query was not the best. They do get progressively worse. And so, we're going to move on to the slightly worse one. And maybe not slightly worse. I think it's just worse in a different way. Howdy. Just opens with howdy. It's going to be a unique time when you open with howdy. I'm not opposed to it, especially if it's a cowboy story. I'm like, okay, cool, we're on brand. I understand where we're going, but I don't think that's what this person was trying to achieve. Howdy. I have no platform. I own a domain name I have played with because I see what the world does to people on social media platforms, I do not participate. I think I'm not currently searchable online, and the only place I maintain any sort of presence is LinkedIn. I could start building one, but I currently have no motivation. Don't think you should ever tell an agent that. I mean, fair, but also I think that's something you should keep to yourself. I understand the points in your video. And to preface that, my agency does have a lot of platform growth videos online that we welcome writers to watch, just so they understand some of the lingo within the publishing world. And realize this is something I should start working on. I only started writing again as of this year. I will say that I am willing to learn and change. Okay, this is my first book of a 3-book series in a planned universe of more than 100 books. That is terrifying. That sends chills of fear throughout an agent's body. Please consider my submission. The series' working title is War for Immortality. Halcyon is book 1. This is an action-adventure with a science fiction setting mixed with elements of fantasy. So I'm guessing this will be more on the speculative lines. Book 1 is currently about 150,000 words. That also sends waves of fear throughout an agent's body. I have written all 3 books in the series, which all need further editing. I am new to this and know there's still much I have to learn. To that end, any guidance in this would be appreciated. The good thing, they are willing to learn, so we like that. Hopefully they have more motivation than what they said, because that's not really great. Just a little note, many publishers right now are not picking up series. So if you have a book that you're like, okay, I have a series that I've planned, the best way to put it is like, oh, this book has series potential, and I've already have worked to outline, or you say, oh, I've already started work on the other books in the series, but it could stand alone. This also depends on the genre. Again, everything in publishing is subjective. Every situation is its own kind of situation rule. But trying to sell a series of 100 books, it's not going to happen. It's very scary to talk about it like that. Also, the word count, 150,000 words is too long, even for science fiction fantasy. It's just going to be hard to sell. And just a little reason why, I think it's just little fun fact. I love fun facts. My family makes jokes of me because I'll be like, oh, fun fact. I'm like, of course, from Caroline. She's going to give us a fun fact. But one of the reasons why publishers have genre word count caps is not just because they are afraid about, reader attention span. It's not because of that only. They know that, let's say if someone wants to go to the beach and they're taking a book with them to the beach, they might feel comfortable buying a book around 80,000 words. That might be a sweet spot for the readership. But really, it boils down to money. How much does it cost to print a book? A book between 80 and 90,000 words is a lot cheaper to print than a book 150,000 words. So if you're writing high fantasy and you do have an audience for that, you might be able to print a giant big book, but it might have a lower print run and it will probably have a higher retail price. And so publishers are always thinking about money, how much it's going to cost per unit. So as a writer, that's something to keep in mind. It's super important to know about the industry. So researching, doing all those kind of things. You're a business person. As a writer, you're an artist, but there comes a point where your art has become a product. And so start thinking strategically about that. It'll give you a leg up over other writers. So that's really important. So this next one, I think it's a query. I received it in my inbox. It might be an invitation to the Illuminati. I'm not sure. It's very confusing and it's a little long. So hold on. This is the last one that I'm going to read you guys. Civilocity is a form of government where the people watch the ruler entirely amongst their reign. That is the opener. There's no introduction, nothing. It jumps right on in. Every person in every country who can vote in a democracy can vote for this idea. Having a human with law is more intelligent than picking a monkey without. It will be a human right for every person in every country to have the right to watch the leader of their country for the entire time anybody ever leaves their country. So I'm guessing they're saying that the ruler should constantly be on camera, I'm guessing. After I beat democracy, I copyrighted civility and made it public domain. You can empower them or yourself. I think that's low-key a threat. We don't know what civility is, but over 100 million lives died in the 20th century alone because numerous leaders of countries covered up unlawful behavior. Right now, democracy has over 7 billion followers who are about to communicate through thought. Now we have telekinesis or something, or whatever you call it when people are changing thoughts. My thoughts are listened to and communicated back. God has about 5 billion followers on earth who will know the nervous system has been figured out to the point others can control your body's reaction to love and pain. My contribution as a writer is a country where the leader never covers up unlawful behavior no matter which country you live in. My contribution as a fiction writer is a country where the leader never covers up unlawful behavior no matter which planet you live on. Now it's science fiction. In Kakor, okay, now we have another planet. The poor have the right to watch the leader of their country entirely amongst God's reign. We know for sure the leader of the country can never cover up unlawful behavior. Upon my first arrival, God granted me the right to share this gift. I, Nate the Great, the king of real estate, took over the world by giving the majority a better choice. Donald or Hillary, or watch whoever wins for the entire time that person leaves their country. Now it's political. And I, Anita, so apparently they're omnipresent or something, and I, Anita, took over the universe by giving the majority a better choice. So we have Nate the Great and Anita. I am the girl who distorts the universe. I empower every mother in every galaxy to have the right to watch the leader of their country entirely amongst God's reign. In Kakor, they call me the Cure, because I roar and I roar and I roar. In America, the poor loved my gift so much they printed my face on money. On earth, the rich loved my gift so much they gave me the Sphinx. Here's the end, guys. I am Nate the Great, the king of real estate, and I, Anita, Superman, and we are from where kings and queens of real estate are born, Kakor. And that is the end. No sign off, nothing. I had to take a swig of water because that was a lot to read. So truth be told, guys, if I received... Those were real. Those were real. And my agents said we've received queries like this very frequently, just from people who don't really know how to structure a query. I mean, it's a business pitch. You see people who get up on Shark Tank and things like that. They're pitching a product. And it's the same thing when it comes to writing. You're pitching a book to express the value of your project, because each and every one of you, your project does have value. So you're simply just communicating that value to someone who you're hoping will be your business partner. But truth be told, if I received a query that long, same with a lot of my agent friends, it's about as long as a sample page almost. And so more than likely, we won't read it. A lot of agents will delete queries if they don't follow a certain format, or they're too long. They'll just be like, okay, this person didn't follow my rules. And that's another little tip. Before you submit to someone, look to see if their website has any submission guidelines, because if you don't follow guidelines, a lot of times that's an immediate delete. Or a blacklist. Like if you are constantly emailing an agent, even after they've rejected you, the publishing industry seems big, but it's pretty small. People talk, and so it's really important to preserve relationships. That's not to be scary. It's more of to just empower you guys to know that maintaining relationships, being kind, will get you really far. So you all have a handout that should have been passed around. I wanted to tell you this. Received riddles before, where people said they give me riddles. They're like, okay, if you solve my riddle, I shall send you my query in my book. I'm like, oh, it's a ballsy move right there. Yes, like some of them, it's kind of scary. I'm like, okay, it's like a serial killer note. I've had friends tell me that they've received like things in the mail where people have like cut and pasted like little letters, which kind of falls into the gimmick. If they've written like a murder mystery novel and they're trying to capture someone's attention, it seems like a good idea, but it can come across rather creepy. And I guess that's a little tip of advice. Just don't be weird, creepy, or crazy. You just don't be a fur-fest John, right? So yes, there should be a handout that's been passed around, and there's some introductory questions. So I always want to go through those and make sure we have some time at the end for just some questions. But do you not have those? Do you all need handouts? Let's say yes, we do. We'll make sure. You need one? They're up here too, so feel free to grab a copy at the end if you want another one. And so yeah, there's some questions on there. So how does an author-agent relationship work? This is a super important question because there are a lot of misperceptions when it comes to this kind of relationship. Thanks to the media, if you watch a movie about publishing, usually 99% of that is false. It's not how it works. And so agents, like literary agents, are not publicists and they're not managers. Literary agent is kind of like a real estate agent. Their primary job is to help broker deals between the author and the publisher. And so there are some agents that are super editorial and will work with you to help you polish your book and get your book ready for to be on submission to publishers. And there are some agents who will work specifically with your proposal and your sample chapters and then trust that the book is ready from that point. So do your research. Agent-author relationships, they're business partnerships. And so being compatible with your agent is really important. You have to make sure your values line up. Because, again, it's that business partnership. You are more than likely going to be with your literary agent longer than you'll be with your publisher. And so if you're with a literary agent, you want to stick with them for the long haul. Make sure that you get along as people. Make sure that what you're expecting from an agent, that's kind of what they're going to offer. And so it is. It's a business relationship. And so when you're looking for an agent, come in with that mentality of, okay, we're going to be collaborative. This is what I'm kind of bringing to the table, and kind of go off from there. So they're not publicists. They won't book speaking events for you. They won't run your social media. They're not your manager. And so just keep that in mind when you're communicating with an agent, because knowing how that works will immediately kind of create a healthy kind of cultural environment with you and a possible agent. Because I've dealt with a lot of writers who have come in thinking that I was going to book all their speaking events for them, and it's kind of a hard conversation to have, to say, okay, that's not my job description. I'm here to help you sell your book, and so that's just an important thing to know. What are the differences between a pitch and a query? Then the answer to that is pretty simple. There's not much of a difference, honestly. A query is an emailed pitch, and a pitch is usually something in publishing that you'll give in person. And so both need to have the same information. And on your handout, there should be like a little, format for you to use when you're pitching and querying. And the next question that I want to answer: elevator pitch, premise, and hook. What are they, and why are they needed? This is a great exercise for all of you to do when you're working on your book. A little backwards tip that I can give: start working on your proposal now. Start thinking about the marketing, start thinking about your platform, start thinking about how you're going to tell other people about your book. An elevator pitch is simply a one sentence that should capture the message or the story of your whole book. If your book can't be condensed into one sentence, you probably need to rework your plot or rethink kind of your ideas, because it should be something quick that you can express. Let's say you're at a big conference and you get in an elevator with an agent and they ask, oh, what are you writing? You should be able to tell them in one sentence, because that shows them that you understand what your book's about and you know how to convey that to someone else in a really snappy manner. Premise. A premise is just 2 to 3 sentences, so it's kind of like an elevator pitch, but it just expounds on your book. So in this way, you can add a little bit more detail, but it's still a quick way to talk about your book. And then a hook, it would kind of be like your back cover blurb. And so that's kind of what you'd read on the back of a book. So practicing writing these different things about your project will really help you understand what your book's about, really help you understand the heart of the book, which will just help the book be stronger and more marketable. So that's kind of why they're needed. When you're pitching to an agent, and just say you have 15 minutes, if any of you guys speak with me later, if you have 15 minutes, don't spend the 15 minutes talking about your book. Spend like 3 to 5 minutes. Talking about the book, talking about yourself, and then leave that other time for questions from the agent, and also just to build a relationship, because if an agent feels like they have a connection to you, more than likely they're going to give your project kind of more thought when they're looking at it. Granted, if you're just cold querying, you might not get the opportunity, but being able to just be professional and can give all the information in a conducive manner will show that agent that you really care about their time and you know how to talk about your book. So there are a few things that I recommend all of you avoid. First one is gimmicks. The gimmicks would be sending riddles and saying, okay, if you answer my riddle, I'll send you my book. or sending the cutouts like of a magazine to try to get people's attention. In theory, this seems like a good idea. I mean, I've been given gifts at conferences before, people trying to capture attention, which again seems like a good idea, but it's not a tried and true way. It doesn't always work, and you do risk becoming that Fur Vest John creepy person. I was working at a conference in Atlanta, and I had a man once sit in front of me visibly upset, and I asked him, what's wrong? What went on? Like, why are you upset? And he looked at me and just sighed and said, I'm frustrated because the conference director wouldn't let me come in here wearing my bunny suit. I was like, a bunny suit? What do you mean? He said, I have a full-out bunny suit in my car. Like a mascot? Like with the head? He's like, oh yeah, with the head. Like with the head. He had written a book. It was like an adult comedy novel about a man who gets stuck in a bunny suit. And so he thought it'd be a fun idea to come in wearing an entire mascot bunny costume to pitch to me. In theory, it seems like a fun idea to get attention. Wouldn't you be a little freaked out, though, if a man comes to sit in front of you in a full-out bunny suit? It's kind of scary. So really, staying away from gimmicks, focusing on being professional and just being concise, that'll really capture someone's attention more than trying to be gimmicky. So yes, spamming. This is another thing I see a lot of writers do. They'll just create a list of all the literary agents they can think of and just start sending, form queries. Sometimes they'll address it to the agent. Sometimes they'll just start sending these queries to whom it may concern, kind of a thing. It's the quickest way to be deleted, honestly. Spend some time looking for agents who align with your core values, who are acquiring your genre, maybe who have acquired books in the past that you think are comparable to yours, and make sure you say all of that. Like in your query, let them know that you've done some research. Don't be creepy again. I've had some people sit with me and have found my blog from middle school that I used to post, and have referenced that, and that's terrifying. Like you went back that far. So by researching to look at them professionally, if you know their dogs' names, you might have gone back too far unless it's directly stated on their website. But just do a little bit of research and make sure that they're acquiring your genre. Another thing, excessive blurbs. We talked a little bit about that, but keep your query short and concise. It should be able to easily fit on one page. Really, I think your actual blurb for your book and the query should be easily one paragraph or two. Don't go more than that, because then it just looks confusing and it's harder to follow. You have to understand too that agents may acquire 100 queries in a day, so their inbox may be just flooded with queries, flooded with submissions, and so you want to honor their time. And so when you can give all the information in a quick way, it just helps. It just helps keep someone's attention. And so on the handout, it kind of includes my personal form that I love to see, and I know a lot of other people in the industry love to see too. So it should have your personalization. Hello, so-and-so, I'm excited to present. Name of book, word count, genre. This immediately lets the agent know, okay, has the person done their research? Do they know where their book fits in the market? Is it in a word count that is conducive to that market? So do your research. I know Writer's Digest has a whole web page about kind of the genre, word counts per genre and things like that. And then which will appeal to fans of comparable titles. So comparable titles, research books that have been recently published in the last 5 years that are similar to the book that you're writing and trying to sell. One of the most poisonous phrases I've heard writers use when pitching or querying, my book will appeal to everyone. That is not great to put into a query, because even if it does appeal to everyone, it's hard from the sales standpoint of, okay, how are we going to position this book, or who is this book for, what kind of marketing stuff can we do for this? And so that's what someone on the industry side is going to be thinking. And so knowing where your book fits in the market, a really great way to know what your comparable titles are, go to a bookstore. Go to where the books that'd be similar to your books be found. Look around, see what genre, see what shelf that would be on, see what books are being shelved around it. And it can even be that simple. So know your comparable titles, and then I believe this project may interest you due to your like of insert book title preference. I know on manuscript wish lists, a lot of agents who are open to queries will kind of have a list of books that they like or that they've recently read and are looking for. And so doing a little bit of research just to know what that agent's interested in will just make your queries seem more personal. So include that key information, Have your concise blurb, 1 to 2 paragraphs, and then conclude with a paragraph about your credentials and platform. So that can be your past writing experiences, the writing groups that you're a part of, your education, social media numbers. Platform is a thing in social media now. I'm teaching a class on that tomorrow. I've been at some conferences where I talk about platform and people look like they want to get their pitchforks and torches and march me to the stake, because it is such a hard thing with a lot of writers, because I know as artists you want to focus on your craft, but from the business side you also need to know how to sell your book. And so platform is an important thing. The platform is your realm of influence. So if you're not a social media person but you're involved in a lot of organizations, or you have an email list or something like that, you don't have to change who you are to thrive in publishing. You just have to know how to connect with your readers. And so really it's just answering that question: what qualifies you to write your book? That's pretty much what that is. Just a few little notes before I open up for questions. In publishing, I know as writers, we really do believe in our books. And you guys are your best advocate. I think when you are trying to sign with an agent, or even when you're looking for a publisher, you're looking for a business partner who will be a gladiator, who will advocate for your work. But at the end of the day, you are your book's best advocate. You know what your book's about. You know how to talk about it. And so I know that there can be, especially at conferences, you're trying to let other people know the value of your book. But I think something that's super important in publishing is just humility. Don't burn bridges. Value people's time. Know that, your book is amazing, but other people have written amazing books too. And so just allowing those thoughts to be in your conversations, it's just important. In publishing, even my agency, we have a list of authors who, we call them diva authors. I know that's not a great term, but we call them diva authors. And they're the authors who are always emailing us saying, okay, my book's the next bestseller, or you need to do this for my book and this for my book. And for someone who's working in the industry, who's working with a lot of different authors, it can just come across really harsh. And so coming in with humility, coming in open to collaboration is huge. Because this is a beautiful thing with publishing. You write a book, let's say you have an agent, you sign with a publisher. That book is yours, you've brought it to life. But it's also your agent who has believed in you, who has believed in your book, who has spent time on this book, who's helped to get a contract for it. And then it's your editor's book too. Your editor has helped polish this book and give it a new breath. It belongs to them too. It belongs to your designer. It belongs to your marketer. Everyone who touches it, it's part of them too. And that's such a beautiful thing in publishing. So having that collaborative team-mindedness will get you so far, because people are going to want to work with you and they're going to want to help your book reach shelves. And this doesn't mean you have to completely change your book, because if you're with the right team, they're going to believe in the heart of the book. And so that's just an important thing to keep in mind. But again, a lot of it's on you. You are writers, each and every one of you. You're probably in different stages of your writing journey. You might just be starting, or you might have a few books that you've been trying to get published for years, but you're where you need to be. Publishing is a long haul industry. It's not a quick turnaround. I know a lot of writers, it's kind of a hard truth where they're like, okay, I want to get my book out this year. More than likely, it's not going to happen. That's okay. It takes, even if you signed a book contract, a lot of times it takes about 2 years to get the book out. So that's just something to keep in mind too. So be in it for the long haul, keep researching, keep growing, and just know that you're where you need to be. And I think that's a big thing. There's no finish line, because once you reach the goal that you've been striving for, there's going to be another goal. And so finding peace in that journey and in that learning process will just help you enjoy the journey. So I want to open up some questions, because we have about 20 minutes, I think, until our session ends. But I want to answer questions that you guys have, and so we can really cater this to you guys. So I want to open up. Yes.
Your opinion, what's the best way for the author to research an agent?
That's a great question. So there are, he asked what's the best way to research an agent. So there are a lot of different websites and databases that have a literary agent information. From there, go to their website, go look, see what they're acquiring. A lot of agents are on manuscript wish list, and so that's a really great way just to see what they're reading. If someone's offered representation and you just want to get a feel for them as a person, a lot of times if an agent's interested in you, they'll request a phone call. Really, this is like an insider tip. If an agent has read your work and they ask for a phone call, more than likely that means they're going to offer representation. More than likely. That's a really great way just to feel them out and get a feel for them as a person. I would recommend not asking an agent what books they've sold up front. A lot of the information is online, so you can go under Publishers Marketplace. A lot of times agencies will even have a list of the books that they've sold. But it's like asking someone their salary, walking up and saying, okay, who have you sold? And it can come across as a little abrasive. But if you are just really interested in an agent, look and see who their other clients are, because that's a lot of times listed on a agency's website. And you can even reach out to some of those clients on social media in a kind way and just ask them how they had enjoyed their experience working with so-and-so. And so little ways like that. But most information you can find online, and really having that phone call. And if you have doubts, listen to your gut. And that's a big advice with publishing too. I mean, you are your book's best advocate. And so if you have a weird vibe with an agent, doesn't mean they're a bad person. It just means that they might not be the right fit for you. And so that's something to keep in mind too. But a lot of information is online on their website, and then you can always reach out to clients too if you've moved further along in the process. But do you have any other questions? Because I'd love to talk more. Yes, ma'am.
I didn't hear the beginning of what he asked. Where do you find a listing agent?
Like to research, like to get a research agents. So you can do Google searches. And there are a lot of databases online that have literary agents. I know that if you search my name, I'll pop up in a lot of different websites, and I didn't even put my name on those websites. It's just them doing research on different agencies. So that'll usually pop up, and then from there you can go to agency websites and see who the agents are, what they're acquiring. You can go on a manuscript wish list. If you have access to Publishers Marketplace, they have a lot of information there. I know even Writer's Digest, they even have a database that they've published regularly of literary agents. I mean, the key is too, if some emails, there's a quick turnaround in publishing. Even with editors. So when I'm sending out my clients' work to editors, I have to go and make sure that person's still at that publisher. Because, there's a really quick turnaround in publishing. Same thing kind of goes with agenting too. And so make sure before you start sending emails out to go and look at that agency website and make sure that person's still agenting for them. It just takes a little bit of legwork. Publishing's not easy, but taking those little steps will just help you make sure that your time's not wasted and that you've been able to take those steps. But do you have some other questions? Yes.
Okay, can you talk about an elevator speech a
little elevator pitch?
Elevator pitch. And
Yeah.
What
that would look like?
Yeah.
So really when it comes to elevator pitches, when you're writing a blurb for your project, you should have kind of a clear idea of what the target audience is, or the genre, what the stakes, kind of the basic plot. For example, if I write YA, so if I was pitching a YA book, you could say, when 15-year-old Andy discovers a secret syndicate at her private school, she must risk everything or whatever to reveal the secrets before it's too late or whatever. That's super broad and that's not exactly perfect, but you want to have clearly defined stakes. You want to have an idea of who the book's for, and so I highlighted the character's age. If you're writing an adult book, you wouldn't necessarily have to do that. Let's say you were writing an adult like rom-com or maybe like a chick lit. You could say a single mom moves to a small town in West Virginia and must choose between this or that before blank or something like that. You just need to have a clearly defined idea of what who the book's for, the stakes, plot, etc., and that'll streamline it. And I will say, as someone who spent probably weeks before I went to that New York Pitch Slam kind of conference trying to perfect my pitch, and I was like, okay, if I had one word wrong, it's going to ruin my chances with this agent. It's really not that. It's not that complex. If you have presented your story in a way that you've defined the stakes that you've kind of shared what the book's about, if that agent's interested in your genre or even interested in just the general concept, more than likely they're going to request it. They're going to request to see more. And so that's something to keep in mind. Also, agents are not gatekeepers to the publishing world. And that was something I've learned. Some of the people I pitched to in New York, I had the pleasure of working with them a few years ago at another conference. As a full-grown adult in publishing, who's been doing this for a while, which was such a cool thing for me to go from being someone who was kind of scared of that agent thinking that they controlled my career to being someone who was having lunch with them at a conference. And so they're not gatekeepers. They will help you take your next step toward traditional publishing. But even if you sign with an agent, it might be years until you get a book contract. So you have to just know that it's a long haul process, and not everything rides on one person's yes or no. And there's a lot of different forms of publishing. That's another little bit of advice. You have to find what publishing option's best for you. We have a completely different model now than we did, and I'll talk about this more tomorrow, but we have a completely different publishing model now than we did about 60 years ago. So there's a lot more publishing options, which is a beautiful thing. It does make it very difficult on the marketing side. We have like over 1 million books published every year worldwide, which does increase market saturation, and it makes it a little bit more difficult to release books, but it does create an opportunity for writers to share their work. And so you have to find what's best for you. I know with traditional publishing, it's a long process. And so if you have a book and you're thinking, okay, I really want to get this out in the next year or two, you might want to consider more of a hybrid publishing model or self-publishing. No publishing is bad. And I know self-publishing has a stigma. I mean, I got my start with self-publishing. And so there's no such thing as bad publishing. You just have to find what's best for your project and give it time that deserves. I'm trying to give as much information as humanly possible at this point. But if you self-publish, just know once your book has an ISBN, once it's been posted somewhere, it is published, and it makes it almost impossible to get it traditionally published at that point. So I know it's a really hard reality. The way that you could get it traditionally published from that point would be to take it down off every platform, kind of do a second edition, like rewrite it, maybe give it a different title, and then pitch it as something new. But it does take a kind of drastic measures to get a self-published book ready for traditional publishing. So again, hard reality, but it's really good to know that up front going in, because if you're in a pitch and that you've paid for, and someone tells you that, then it can be really crushing. So I think it's good to know that up front. So once your book has an ISBN, it is published. So before you press post, which I know it's so tempting. I know it's so tempting to know that you could release your book at any time. Just think about it, sit on it, and make the best informed decision for that project. Yes, sir.
To your point, with the changing nature of publishing
Yeah.
and the relationship of agents and publishers,
Yeah.
is there a growing sense of agents representing other types of publishing other than the big house type, like
Yeah.
self-publishing and so on?
Yeah. Well,
And how do you distinguish between them?
Mhm.
Because it's almost like a symbiotic relationship.
Oh, yeah.
You with the publisher.
Yeah. Well, when working with bigger publishers, a lot of publishers require the literary agent simply because there are so many books. The agent's kind of that middleman to help sort through that initial haul. Let's say you have 1,000 people seeking publication, and 1,000 people all query an agent. Okay, that agent will sort through. Let's say find the top 100. Then they send those top 100 to the publisher, and the publisher gets to sort through them. So we kind of weed through books that are ready for publication and books that are not ready for publication. Now, a lot of small presses do not require agented representation. So if you're trying to sign with a smaller press, then you technically don't really need a literary agent if that's not what they're requiring. Unless you wanted someone on the legal side. But agents, if you're looking for an agent and they're asking to be paid up front, run. That's a scam. Agents work off commission, just like a real estate agent. Whenever I'm talking to someone who's not in publishing and I relate literary agenting to real estate agenting, it's like a light bulb goes on in people's head. They're like, okay, I get that. I can understand that. And so if if an agent is asking for money up front, run and know that it's commission based. So a lot of agents won't take on books that they know that the author really wants to end up with a small press, just because commission might be less. I do work with a lot of small presses just because I think that there's a place for them, and then not all books are ready, or not all books will cater to big publishers. There are certain books that are more niche, and the small press is a better home for them. Or if there's an author that's like, okay, we've tried with the big five. I really found this small press that I absolutely love, and I think it's going to help market and sell my book. Every situation is its own situation. So I can give general advice when it comes to publishing, but from your own experience, you might have a different experience from what I'm talking about. So back to your question, you don't need an agent if you're self-publishing. If you have a small press that just is open to submissions, you technically don't need a literary agent. In that case, though, you might want to hire an editor. Like if you're like, okay, I really want to self-publish, or I really want to go with a smaller press, but you don't need a literary agent, you might want to hire an editor to help go over your project. And, that's
But assume that I did all of that.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I want an agent?
If you wanted to be with a bigger publisher, yeah.
An agent that would facilitate the sale of the book.
Well, if you're with a bigger publisher, I mean, if you're with a smaller press, like if you wanted someone to give legal advice, I mean, we could work with a lawyer to look over your contract. But a lot of literary agents, if you wanted to go smaller, you don't necessarily need a literary agent. But let's say you did want one, that agent's going to kind of expect, though, to be able to pitch to some bigger publishers. So yeah, do we have some other questions? Yes.
Could you talk a little more about stakes? I mean,
Yeah.
maybe not life or death, but
Yeah.
some examples of what actual stakes.
Yeah, that's a really great question too, and I think that's kind of broad. I mean, in life, I would say in life, and that's one beautiful thing with stories. You know, we're all living a story. We're all the protagonists in the story that's being authored like through us, which is a beautiful thing. So stake could be something. It could be super simple. So if you're opening a scene and you're like, okay, stakes, it doesn't necessarily mean someone's bleeding out on the floor. You know, it could be someone waiting at the bar, you know, waiting for someone to show up, and they're nervous, and it could be something descriptive. You know, they're, scrunching a napkin in their hands, like nervously stirring their straw in the drink. You know, and why are they nervous? You know, it could be something super simple. They're afraid to be rejected or whatever. So it can be on a emotional basis, or it could be something on a bigger life or death situation. You know, so you have to pinpoint when you're writing a novel and you're trying to pinpoint the stakes. You have to really look at what does the character have to lose. You know, what's their biggest fear? You know, and how's the story preying off their fear? And so I think stake is a broad term, but it's really what's going to move that story forward. You know, what's going to give that story purpose? It's that why. And even if you're working on a nonfiction book, I think message is key to a book. Even if you're writing fiction, it's the heart of what's the story about and why should someone read it. You know, what's that why? And even when you're writing an elevator pitch or your blurb or whatever, knowing what the why behind that book. You know, what's the book really about? Why should someone read this? It's just a good thing to keep in mind. So I know that's a really broad answer to answer your questions, but it's really what does that character have to lose? And in a situation, it's what makes the situation important to the story, if that makes sense. So I think every scene should have some kind of stakes. All right, do you have some other questions? I'm trying to keep this from going dead. I think, let's see how much time we have left. Okay, we have about 7 minutes. So, we can keep talking, or do you have any questions about platform or what looks good to an agent? I know platform's kind of a big thing right now. Yes.
Okay, what looks good for
Yeah, what looks
platforms?
good for platform? I love talking about platform. So I come from a publicist side, so I've worked on the publicity side in publishing. And with authors, if you're writing fiction, platform isn't always the number one thing publishers look at, but this is my best way to describe it. If you have two authors come in with terrific books, and let's say an acquisitions editor in a publishing house loves two books, takes them both to pub board, and pub board, which is kind of like the council within the publishing house, that they have like different people from different departments who will help decide if the book is worth acquiring. You know, if they have two books that are equal in quality, but one of the authors has platform, let's say they have a social media following, or they have some connections to some bigger individuals, which would be considered shared platform, and you have an author that isn't on social media, has what our query friend said, no motivation, things like that, more than likely the publisher is going to go with the good book that has platform. So it's like that thing, it's not always necessary to have, but if you're competing for a spot on a publisher's list, it looks really good. And the great thing about platform is a direct link between you and your possible reader. So it's a great way as an author to communicate with readers, and relationships sell books. So on social media, it's not about being a Kardashian, it's not about being like a big influencer. It's simply about knowing how to connect with your readers and have a relationship with them, because the people you connect with on social media are more than likely going to be people who buy your book. Just like the organizations you're a part of, that's considered platform. If you're writing children's books and you're a librarian or you're a teacher and you have a lot of teacher friends or you're part of some different organizations, that's considered platform. So platform is simply knowing, okay, who are my readers and how do I reach them? So for a publisher, let's say you have 60,000 followers on a Facebook page that sells Mary Kay, but you've written an adult thriller. More than likely, a publisher is going to see that platform and is thinking, okay, we can sell maybe we can sell some books through this, but more than likely, it's not exactly the most useful platform. Let's say you're on Instagram and you have a few hundred followers that are always commenting on your posts, that you're really close with, that are for sure interested in the book that you're reading, a publisher might look at that and think, okay, this is more useful. And ultimately, the willingness to grow is huge. So if you are working on your platform right now and working to grow your following on Facebook, Twitter, social media, just in general, I mean, and not all social media platforms will be right for you and your genre, so something to keep in mind. You don't have to be on everything all the time. But for a publisher to see, okay, they're actively working to grow their platform and they really care about this and they understand the value of this, a publisher is really attracted to that. So number-wise, doesn't always matter. It's what the question is this useful platform? And how do I convey this value to a publisher? Email lists are also really important. As someone who writes YA, I haven't fully harnessed the power of my email list yet. I love Instagram, and that's what I'll be talking about tomorrow, because Instagram really sells fiction and nonfiction. I mean, really, it just sells books in general. But you have to find where your readers hang out. So if you've written a nonfiction book, maybe find some different Facebook pages that are part of that, maybe speak on that subject, or maybe join some organizations or do things like that. When it comes to platform, though, this is a little tip, and I'll talk again about this tomorrow. Don't over-promote. Don't over-self-promote. If you're always time posting, oh, buy my book, please buy my book, it's not great. If you're a writer and you're like, okay, I haven't released a book, what am I going to post about? Come to my workshop tomorrow, and I'll tell you. Little plug there. So when it comes to platform, it can be as simple or as complex as we make it, but really it's showing that willingness to learn and grow, trying different things, and just trying to connect with readers. And this is what I wanted to say, back to the whole over-marketing, self-promotion. People get tired of hearing about your book, honestly. Like, they'll start tuning it out. So you have to be careful about how you're talking about your book. So let's say you really want to encourage people to go buy your book. Instead of saying, go buy my book, it releases this Friday, you could say, oh, wow, I love the cover that so-and-so designed for this book. It'll be in print on Friday. If you'd like to know more, go to this website. It's all about our language, too. So consumers, this is just from a business perspective, consumers are very suspicious, and they don't like being told what to do. So you telling someone to go buy your book, more than likely they're not going to buy their book. They need to think it's their idea. So it seems sneaky, but it's giving them permission to make that decision for themselves. So from a marketing perspective, it's another little tip. I have given you every little bunch of rabbit holes, or not rabbit holes, rabbit trails, a bunch of different rabbit trails. But I hope this at least helps you kind of feel confident in moving into your querying and pitching season, and knowing that you are capable of doing this. You're not too young. You're not too old. You are not out of the game. Each of you has a place in publishing. You just have to know your niche. That's really so simple. Each of you have a place. There's always a place for a new book in publishing. So it's really just knowing who your audience is and knowing how to convey your project's value, and that'll really help you take your next steps. But thank you, all of you, for coming to this. And this has been super fun. So thank you for letting me come and speak to you.